The morning sun spilled golden light over the palace gardens, brushing the marble paths and gilded fountains with warmth. Birds sang in the air, their calls echoing among the tall hedges and flowering trees. Princess Ilara walked slowly, her hands clasped behind her back, her mind weighed down by her daily duties. She had grown accustomed to the endless rhythm of court life, meetings, lessons, ceremonies. But sometimes, the quiet of the gardens was the only place she could think without interruption. Today, a new apprentice had arrived at the palace. His name was Kale, a boy whose reputation was small, almost insignificant. He had trained in the armory, learning to repair and maintain the palace's mechanical devices and defensive systems. From what Ilara had seen so far, there was nothing remarkable about him. His clothes were simple, his hands were rough with work, and he carried himself with quiet humility. To her, he seemed like any other apprentice, destined to pass through the palace unnoticed. The head steward introduced him formally as they walked past the fountain.
"Princess Ilara, this is Kael."
He will assist with the defensive mechanisms for the palace during the Enviro Guard exercise this week. Kale bowed politely, his dark eyes steady and calm.
"It is an honor to serve, Princess," he said softly. His voice was quiet but confident, carrying no arrogance.
Ilara gave him a brief nod, already turning her attention to the roses nearby, their petals glistening with dew. She watched as Kale moved toward the armory, where countless mechanical devices were stacked and stored. The young man examined each device with a careful eye, checking bolts, gears, and circuits. His fingers moved deftly, adjusting with precision, almost as if he could see the problems before they happened. Ilara glanced back at him after a few minutes, barely impressed. "It's just luck," she murmured to herself, convinced that his actions were ordinary, nothing more than routine. But over the hours, she noticed patterns in his work, where other apprentices would patch weak points. Kale reinforced them in anticipation of future failures. Where a guard might place a simple barricade, Kale added mechanisms that could move and adapt, responding automatically to pressure or attack. His mind worked like a living machine, predicting challenges and solving them before they even appeared. Even the head steward, an old man with decades of experience, looked on in surprise. "He has a rare gift," the man whispered. "Few understand machinery the way he does. Some say he can anticipate failure before it happens." Ilara tried to hide her curiosity, pretending to busy herself with her daily schedule. Yet she could not deny the growing tension in the palace. News had arrived that the EnviroGuard exercise would involve live simulation against apex predators, creatures captured from distant worlds used to test human ingenuity and palace defenses. These predators were feared not just for their size, but for their intelligence. They hunted in coordinated packs, adapting quickly to traps and obstacles. By evening, the sky darkened in a strange way. A low, unnatural shadow crept across the horizon. The palace bells rang urgently, signaling an attack. Guards ran to their posts, eyes wide with fear. Outside the walls, the first predators were arriving. Their shapes were massive, muscular, and terrifying. Each moved with deliberate intelligence, sniffing the air, testing the ground, analyzing the palace defenses as if they could read the humans' thoughts. Ilara's heart pounded. She had always believed the palace was invincible, that no force could breach its walls. But the predators moved with deadly coordination, approaching the gates as if they knew the weak points better than the humans did. Kale appeared suddenly beside her, calm and collected, almost eerily so. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, placing his hands on the control panel. His movements were precise and deliberate. Levers shifted, lights flickered, and the defensive barriers hummed to life. The predators paused for a moment, sensing resistance, but the palace defenses, now guided by Kale's quick thinking, sprang into action. Mechanical drones darted from hidden compartments, lights flashed, and sound emitters projected disorienting frequencies. The predators faltered, recoiling from the sudden onslaught of technology. Elara watched in disbelief. He's controlling all of this, she whispered to herself. Her mind struggled to keep up with the sight before her. The boy she had dismissed as ordinary was commanding the palace defenses like a master strategist. A predator lunged at a gate, its claws raking against reinforced steel. Kale's fingers danced over the panel. The gate shifted slightly, closing a small gap, and the predator slammed against it. Stunned, another moved toward a wall, testing its strength. Kale triggered a countermeasure. A hidden net shot from above, wrapping the predator tightly before it could reach the humans. The guards, previously panicked, began to gain hope. They followed Kale's commands, moving with precision and confidence they hadn't known they possessed. Every trap, every device, every emergency system seemed to anticipate the predator's actions before they happened. Elara stepped closer, trying to comprehend it all. Kale's calm demeanor was unsettling. He moved among the chaos like he had rehearsed it 1,000 times, yet nothing in his behavior seemed staged. It was instinct, and it was brilliant. The predators adapted. One of the largest creatures, its scales glinting in the dim light, roared and advanced again. It smashed a barricade, testing the palace defenses like a living battering ram. Hale didn't flinch. With a few swift gestures, he deployed a mechanism that released a burst of controlled energy, sending the predator stumbling backward. It shook itself, growled, and adjusted. But Kale was already ready for its next move. Elara felt a mix of fear and awe. The boy she had thought unremarkable was nothing short of extraordinary. She had been wrong. Entirely wrong. The night stretched on, filled with the sounds of battle, mechanical whirring, predator roars, alarms, and shouts. Kale moved like a shadow through it all, unseen by most but orchestrating every action, every trap, every countermeasure. It was as if he had become one with the palace itself, understanding its heartbeat and flow. At one point, a predator leapt toward Elara herself, and time seemed to slow. She froze, eyes wide with terror. But Kale was faster. With a simple adjustment of the floor panels, a sudden pit opened, and the predator fell in, roaring in frustration. Elara realized then that she had been safe all along, shielded by his foresight and skill. By the time the first light of dawn touched the gardens, the predators were retreating. Many had fled, some injured, and a few had been captured or neutralized. The palace had survived. The guards were exhausted but alive, and the court began to understand what had just happened. Elara approached Kale, her steps hesitant but purposeful. He was already inspecting the mechanisms, calm as ever, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. You did all of this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale looked up, meeting her gaze without pride or boastfulness. "I only did what needed to be done," he said simply. "The palace is meant to protect, and the people inside it deserve that protection. That is all." Elara's respect for him deepened. She had always admired courage and intelligence, but this was something different. The boy she had dismissed as an ordinary apprentice had shown her the true strength of humanity. Not just skill, but the ability to adapt, to survive, and to outthink even the most fearsome predators. For the first time in her life, Elara understood the quiet power of underestimation. She had believed Kale was small, weak, and unimportant. She had been wrong, and in that realization, she felt a spark of something profound. The knowledge that humans, underestimated and overlooked, could achieve greatness that no one, not even apex predators, could imagine. Kale continued his work quietly, oblivious to the admiration in her gaze. And for Elara, the lesson was clear. The boy she had dismissed was not ordinary. He was extraordinary. And in the days to come, she would see just how far his brilliance, and the brilliance of humanity, could reach. The sun had barely risen when the palace began to stir with tension again. The predators from the previous night had not vanished entirely. Scouts in smaller packs lingered at the edges of the forest surrounding the palace, studying, waiting, calculating. They were intelligent hunters, and Kale had shown them their first failure. They would not make the same mistake twice. Alara watched from the highest balcony as the guards prepared once more. Their exhaustion was visible, battered armor, bruised arms, and haunted eyes. But there was determination, too. They had survived, and now they were ready to defend their home again. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, but it was tempered by the awe she still carried for Kale. He moved through the palace corridors, inspecting every system, every device, every possible weak point. His calmness seemed almost unnatural in the face of what had happened. But to Alara, it was inspiring. Here was a human who did not panic, did not falter, and did not doubt. Here was someone who refused to accept defeat. The first wave of predators approached at midday. They were smarter now, smaller groups testing different points of attack. Their claws struck with precision, their eyes scanning for patterns. The palace defenses, which had seemed sufficient the night before, now faced a real test. Kale anticipated every move. He adjusted sensors to track predator movement, deployed nets and barriers in seconds, and coordinated the guards with gestures and calm commands. The drones he had modified last night swooped in intricate patterns, disorienting the predators, forcing them to retreat or drawing them into traps. Alara followed him closely, her eyes wide with amazement. "How do you?" she began, but Kale only shook his head, focused entirely on the battle unfolding around them. "It's not about me," he said softly. "It's about thinking ahead, predicting what they will do before they do it. That is the difference between surviving and failing." The princess realized the truth in his words immediately. She had always relied on rules and orders, on power and privilege, on what had worked before. But Kale relied on thought, observation, and improvisation. The predators were fierce, but they had limits, and he understood those limits instinctively. A massive predator charged at the eastern gate. Guards shouted, raising weapons, but their efforts seemed almost pointless against its sheer strength. Kale acted instantly. He triggered a hidden mechanism in the gate, and a section of the wall extended outward, forming a ramp that funneled the creature toward a waiting trap. The predator fell into a pit lined with steel spikes, not enough to kill, but enough to immobilize it. Alara gasped. "It's incredible." Kale didn't look up. "Focus on the next wave," he said quietly. But it was not just the traps that impressed her. Kale's true brilliance was in how he moved beyond the obvious solutions. He anticipated that the predators would adapt quickly, learning from failed attacks. He modified drones on the fly, changed barrier sequences, and even used sound frequencies to confuse their highly tuned senses. Every action was proactive, not reactive. By late afternoon, it was clear to everyone inside the palace that the predators were being outmatched. They snarled, retreated, regrouped, and attacked again, only to find themselves trapped, confused, or forced into narrow corridors where humans had the advantage. The guards, once panicked and unsure, now followed Kale's commands with precision. Humans who had never faced danger were becoming soldiers, coordinated by the quiet genius of a boy they had underestimated. Alara felt a strange pride swelling in her chest. She had always known humans were capable, but she had never seen it like this. One young apprentice, barely more than a boy, was showing her the depth of human ingenuity. They had been called weak, fragile, and simple compared to the predators. Yet here they were, surviving, adapting, and even thriving. As night fell again, Kale did not stop. The palace's lights flickered to life in patterns designed to confuse and mislead. Hidden doors opened and closed. Pathways shifted, and mechanical barriers moved with fluidity that mimicked life itself. The predators began to hesitate, realizing they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey in a battle of wits and will. Alara stayed by his side, heart racing, eyes scanning the chaos below. She had never imagined that humans could be this clever, this relentless, this resourceful. Kale was the living proof. He didn't shout or boast. He didn't seek recognition. He simply observed, calculated, and acted. Then came the moment that would change everything. A predator leapt onto the palace roof, large enough to crush a human with a single swipe. It snarled, eyes glowing with intelligence. The guards below froze, unsure how to react. But Kale already had a solution. He activated a series of mechanisms along the roof, panels that could shift weight and angle, creating an unstable surface. The predator lost its footing, sliding down and falling into a net trap below. It struggled violently, but the design of the trap allowed no escape. Alara's jaw dropped. "It's like he's thinking 10 steps ahead of them," she whispered. Kale glanced at her briefly. "You don't fight with strength alone. You fight with your mind. And humans are adaptable in ways no predator can match. We learn, we improvise, we endure." For the first time, Alara truly understood what HFY meant. Humans were underestimated not because they lacked skill or strength, but because their greatest power was invisible. It was the spark of creativity, the courage to act against impossible odds, the ability to unite and innovate. As the night stretched on, the predators became cautious. They no longer charged blindly. They studied, hesitated, and tried to test the palace's defenses with smaller groups. But Kale was ready. Every ambush was anticipated, every trap effective, every counter perfectly timed. The humans inside the palace were no longer fighting for survival. They were asserting dominance over the predators through ingenuity and strategy. Alara's respect for Kale deepened with every passing hour. She had underestimated him completely, and in doing so, she had underestimated humanity as a whole. The boy who had seemed ordinary was extraordinary, not just in skill but in vision. He saw the world differently, not limited by fear or convention, and it was that perspective that allowed humans to prevail where brute force alone would fail. By the end of the second night, the predators retreated farther into the forest. They had learned that direct attacks would cost them too much. They began to observe from a distance, wary, cautious, and defeated in spirit. The palace had survived again not through luck or sheer numbers, but through the brilliance of a human mind that refused to be underestimated. Alara walked through the gardens the next morning, Kale by her side. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and the remnants of the battle, but there was a sense of calm. The guards moved with renewed confidence, inspired by the apprentice who had turned chaos into order. "You've done something incredible," she said softly. "Not just for the palace, but for all of us. You've shown what humans can do when they refuse to be beaten." Kale looked down, his expression modest. "I only did what was necessary. Humans are capable of more than they know. We adapt, we endure. And sometimes we surprise even ourselves." Alara smiled, a new determination rising in her chest. She had always dreamed of protecting her people, of ensuring their survival. But now she understood that survival was only the beginning. With minds like Kale's, humans could rise above danger, could face the apex predators of the universe, and could claim their place as masters of their fate. For the first time, she saw the true potential of the people she ruled. Humans were underestimated by others because they were clever, unpredictable, and resilient. And in Kale, she had seen all of that and more. The princess realized that the battle was far from over. The predators would return, smarter and hungrier, but so would the humans. Kale's brilliance had turned fear into strategy, panic into precision, and doubt into hope. And as long as humans continued to think, adapt, and act, no predator, no matter how intelligent or fierce, could stand against them. Alara walked beside Kale, her heart filled with awe and gratitude. She had learned a lesson she would never forget. To underestimate a human, to dismiss their creativity, was the gravest mistake any predator, or any opponent, could make. And she knew, deep down, that Kale was only the beginning of what humanity could achieve. The days that followed were tense but strangely exhilarating. The palace had survived 2 nights of predator attacks, but everyone knew that survival alone was not victory. The predators were intelligent, cunning, and relentless. They would not forget the defeats they had suffered, nor would they underestimate humans again. Alara observed the palace from the highest balcony, her eyes scanning the forest edges. Kale moved below, checking systems, inspecting devices, and issuing precise instructions to the guards. He did not rush. He did not panic. Every movement was deliberate, every decision calculated. He seemed to anticipate not just what the predators might do next, but how the palace itself would react. "I have been studying them," Kale said quietly as he approached her. "They learn fast. Their intelligence is dangerous, but not beyond comprehension. We must think like them, anticipate their tactics, and then be ready for what comes after." Alara nodded. She had always admired his calm mind, but now she realized it was something deeper, a strategic brilliance that went beyond ordinary understanding. He could see patterns, predict behavior, and orchestrate responses in real time, and that skill had saved the palace twice already. The 3rd night arrived with a thick fog that cloaked the surrounding forest. Visibility was low, but the predators had not been deterred. From the tree line, they watched and waited. Alara could feel the tension in the air, the silent anticipation of creatures that had learned caution but not surrender. Kale moved among the palace defenses, checking and adjusting, his focus absolute. "Tonight," he said softly, "we don't just survive, we assert control." They need to understand that this palace is ours, that humans are not prey. The predators struck shortly after midnight. Smaller packs moved with stealth, attempting to breach the outer walls, while the larger, more intelligent predators tested the gates and towers. The palace seemed alive with movement. Drones buzzed like swarms of insects, mechanical arms shifted into position, and barriers adjusted automatically. Every system Kale had designed responded as if it had a mind of its own. Alara followed him closely, heart racing. She had watched Kale operate during the first 2 attacks, but tonight felt different. Tonight he was no longer reacting, he was initiating. Each trap, each maneuver, was designed not just to defend, but to teach, to force the predators into patterns where humans had the advantage. A large predator leapt toward the courtyard, its claws striking sparks off the reinforced ground. Kale moved to a nearby control panel, tapping sequences quickly. Hidden panels in the floor opened, releasing a controlled flood of water that forced the predator back. Another trap snapped shut behind it, creating a maze of barriers that disoriented the creature. Alara gasped. "It's like he's playing with them, teaching them their place." Kale glanced at her briefly. "It's about more than defense," he said. "Humans survive because we learn. If the predators cannot adapt faster than we do, they will fail." The predators adapted quickly, but Kale had already anticipated it. Where they tried to regroup and attack together, he had set traps that forced separation. Sound emitters confused their coordination, mechanical drones blocked their paths, and the palace's design itself became a weapon. Every step the predators took played into human hands. Alara could see the fear in their eyes now. They were intelligent, yes, but even intelligence had limits. They had expected to find prey easy and predictable. Instead, they found humans who could think, anticipate, and strike with precision that rivaled their own cunning. A predator lunged at Kale directly. Its eyes glinted with malice, and it moved faster than any human could run. The guards froze, unsure how to react, but Cattle was already ready. He leapt aside, triggering a mechanism that released a series of nets and wires. ensnaring the creature in a controlled fall. It thrashed, snarled, and roared, but the trap was perfect. Alara's pulse raced. She had never imagined that one human could command an entire palace so effectively. That strategy could triumph over raw strength. She realized with a thrill of awe that Kale's intelligence was the weapon, and humans, when clever and courageous, could rival the deadliest creatures in the universe. The night stretched on. Every predator attack was met with carefully orchestrated resistance. Some were captured, some driven away, and some injured, but not killed. Kale's tactics were clear. Humans did not need to destroy their opponents. They needed to outthink them, to make them retreat. Strength alone was insufficient. It was strategy that defined victory. Alara moved through the courtyard, watching Kale give instructions. He spoke quietly, but the guards understood him perfectly. His commands were simple, precise, and adaptable. Each guard moved like a part of a living machine, responding instantly to threats. The palace was no longer a building. It was a fortress alive with human ingenuity. At one point, a predator tried a new approach, attempting to scale the northern wall, where traps had been minimal. Kale anticipated it. Before the predator reached the top, a series of counterweights and pivoting panels shifted, forcing the creature back and into a narrow alley where drones and barriers trapped it. It roared in frustration, confused and unable to escape. Alara felt a surge of pride. Humans had turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. Where brute strength had failed, intelligence had prevailed. Where fear might have paralyzed lesser minds, Kale had shown courage, clarity, and creativity. The predator was powerful, yes, but the human mind was stronger still. Hours passed, and by dawn, the predators had retreated. They were beaten not by numbers or weapons, but by anticipation, adaptation, and intelligence. The palace remained intact, its people safe, and the humans had proven something extraordinary. They were capable of more than anyone, including themselves, had imagined. Alara walked beside Kale, awe and admiration written on her face. "You've done something no one thought possible," she said softly. "You've turned fear into control, chaos into order. You've shown what humans can do." Kale looked at her, calm as always. "Humans are underestimated," he said. "We endure, we adapt, we learn, and we fight when we must. That is our advantage. Predators have instincts. Humans have minds. That is the difference." Alara smiled, feeling a rush of understanding and hope. She had always believed in her people, but now she saw the truth in Kale's words. Humans were clever, resourceful, and resilient. They could survive anything, and if they acted together with intelligence and courage, they could thrive where others failed. In the days that followed, Kale worked tirelessly. He refined the palace defenses, tested new devices, and trained the guards to think creatively rather than react blindly. The predators, still lurking in the shadows, learned to respect the human's strength and cunning. Every attempted attack was met with careful strategy. Every challenge turned into an opportunity for humans to demonstrate their skill. Alara observed all of this and learned from him. She realized that leadership was not about command alone. It was about understanding, anticipation, and adaptation. She began to think differently. Inspired by Kale's example, humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, capable of facing impossible odds and turning them to their advantage. Then came a night when the predators launched their most coordinated attack yet. They struck simultaneously from multiple sides, testing every trap, barrier, and drone. The palace trembled under the assault. But Kale was ready. He moved through the control panels with unmatched speed, activating defenses, redirecting drones, and forcing the predators into zones they could not escape. Alara followed closely, heart pounding. She had seen Kale at work before, but tonight his brilliance reached new heights. Every move was calculated, every action anticipating the predator's instincts. The palace itself seemed alive under his guidance, a living fortress that adapted to every threat. A predator that had evaded the traps before now found itself surrounded by a maze of shifting walls. Drones closed in from above, and sound emitters disrupted its senses. It roared, frustrated and confused, unable to move without entering another trap. Alara could hardly believe what she saw. Humans, once thought weak and fragile, were now masters of the battlefield. They were clever, adaptable, and unstoppable. Kale had shown her that true strength was not measured in power alone. It was measured in mind, courage, and ingenuity. By dawn, the predators had retreated again, exhausted, defeated, and wary. The palace had survived yet another night, stronger and more prepared than before. The humans inside had proven that they were not just capable of surviving. They were capable of winning. Alara walked beside Kale, her heart full of admiration. "You've done more than protect this palace," she said. "You've shown the true strength of humanity. You've shown that we are not to be underestimated." Kale nodded, calm as ever.
"It is only the beginning," he said. "Humans endure, humans learn, and humans rise."
"That is our nature. And as long as we remember that, nothing can defeat us." Alara looked out over the palace grounds, a new determination burning within her. She had learned that the greatest power humans possessed was not in strength, weapons, or walls. It was in their minds. And with Kale by their side, she knew that humanity could face anything, overcome any predator, and claim their place as masters of their destiny. For the first time, she truly understood the meaning of HFY. Humans were underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed by others. But in moments like this, when courage met intellect, when strategy met instinct, humans were unstoppable. And Kale, the apprentice she had once thought ordinary, had proven it to her, and to the universe, beyond any doubt. The forest surrounding the palace was eerily silent. The predators that had harassed the palace for days lingered at the edges, their glowing eyes watching from the shadows. But there was caution now, a hesitation born of repeated defeats. They had learned that brute strength alone could not overcome humans. Humans, as Kale had shown, were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. Alara stood at the balcony, the first rays of sunlight touching her face. She felt a mix of anticipation and pride. The battles had changed her. She had once underestimated humans, but now she understood their true power. They could adapt, think ahead, and survive against impossible odds. And they could win if they acted together. Kale was already moving through the palace, checking systems one last time. Every trap, every drone, every barrier was in place. He had spent the past days refining the palace defenses, not just to protect, but to teach the predators that humans were not prey. They were predators in their own right. "The predators will test us one final time," Kale said quietly as he walked past her. "They are smart, patient, and relentless. But we are ready. Tonight we do not just survive. We assert dominance." Alara nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "Then let's show them what humans are capable of." As night fell, the predators launched their most coordinated attack yet. They struck from every direction simultaneously, testing the palace walls, towers, gates, and gardens. The sound of their roars echoed through the night, sending tremors across the stone paths. The palace seemed alive with movement. Drones swarmed through the air. Mechanical barriers shifted and closed automatically, and hidden traps activated in perfect sequence. Kale moved among the chaos with calm precision. His hands flew over control panels, triggering sequences, adjusting systems, and guiding the guards. His mind seemed to anticipate every predator move before it even happened. Where others would panic, he acted decisively, turning danger into opportunity. The predators were smart, adapting faster than before. One massive creature smashed a gate, testing the palace defenses. Another group attempted to bypass the walls entirely, moving through hidden paths in the forest. But Kale was ready. The creatures found themselves funneled into areas designed to slow them down, separated by barriers, and met with drones that disoriented and trapped them. Elara moved through the courtyard, watching the battle unfold. She had seen Kale at work before, but tonight his brilliance was unmatched. Every trap, every sequence, every defensive maneuver was perfect. The palace was no longer just a fortress. It was a weapon, a reflection of human ingenuity and strategy. At one point, a predator leapt directly at Kale, eyes blazing with fury. The guards froze, unsure what to do, but Kale had anticipated this. With a swift motion, he triggered a trap beneath the predator's feet. Panels shifted, sending the creature stumbling into a net that immobilized it completely. It thrashed violently, but it could not escape. Elara's heart raced. He's controlling the battlefield like a master, she whispered to herself. She could see clearly now that humans, when clever and united, could overcome even the deadliest creatures. Strength was not enough. Intelligence, strategy, and adaptability were the true weapons. The night wore on, and the predators began to realize they were outmatched. They had underestimated humans once, twice, and now it was obvious they had underestimated them completely. Every attack was anticipated, every movement countered. They were trapped in a battle of wits and courage, and the humans inside the palace were winning. Kale continued to orchestrate the defense, his calm demeanor inspiring the guards and Elara alike. The humans had become more than survivors. They were warriors of mind and strategy. Each predator that fell into a trap, each group that retreated, was proof of human ingenuity and resilience. By midnight, the predators' morale began to break. They were wounded, confused, and frustrated. They had never faced an opponent like humans before. Creatures who could think faster, adapt more quickly, and strike with precision. Kale had turned every strength of the predators against them. And it was working. Elara followed him through the palace halls, marveling at his focus and foresight. He moved with quiet confidence, adjusting devices, issuing commands, and constantly analyzing the battlefield. The humans inside the palace had learned from him. They anticipated predator movements, adapted defenses, and acted with efficiency and courage. One of the largest predators, a hulking beast with scales as black as night, tried to break through the northern gate. Kale had predicted this move. He triggered a series of mechanisms that turned the courtyard into a maze of shifting barriers. The predator charged blindly, crashing into walls and traps until it was finally cornered and subdued. Elara could hardly believe what she saw. The humans had not just survived, they had dominated. They had turned fear into strategy, chaos into opportunity, and the battlefield into a reflection of their intelligence. Hale paused for a moment, watching the predators retreat into the forest. "They understand now," he said quietly. "Humans are not prey. We are hunters in our own right, and they will remember that." Elara's chest swelled with pride. She had seen the potential of humans before, but now it was undeniable. They were clever, adaptable, and brave. They could survive anything, overcome impossible odds, and rise above danger. The next morning, the forest was quiet. The predators had withdrawn, cautious and wary, and the palace stood unbroken. The humans inside emerged, exhausted but victorious. The guards looked to Kale and Elara with respect and admiration. They had witnessed a transformation. Humans had proven that they were not to be underestimated. Elara walked beside Kale through the gardens, the morning sun warming their faces.
"You've done more than protect the palace," she said softly. "You've shown what humans can do."
"You've turned survival into victory and fear into strength." Kale smiled faintly. "Humans endure," he said. We learn, we adapt, we rise. That is our greatest power. Predators have instincts. Humans have minds. That is the difference. Alara looked around at her people, at the guards and workers who had fought and survived under Kale's guidance. She realized that HFY was not just about one person. It was about the collective strength of humanity, their ingenuity, courage, and determination. Even when faced with creatures far stronger and faster, humans could prevail. In the days that followed, the palace became a model of human ingenuity. Kale refined defenses, trained the guards, and developed new strategies. The predators continued to lurk at the forest edges, but they no longer dared to attack. They had learned their place, and humans had proven theirs. Alara stood beside Kale one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in orange and red. "Do you think they will ever return?" she asked. Kale shook his head. "Perhaps, but humans are ready. We have learned. We have adapted. And we have shown that we are not to be underestimated." "That is enough," Alara smiled, feeling hope and pride swelling in her chest. She had once underestimated humans herself, but Kale had shown her the truth. Humans were clever, resilient, and unstoppable when united by courage and intelligence. The princess realized that the palace was more than just a fortress. It was a symbol of human strength. The battles had tested their courage, intelligence, and resolve, and humans had emerged victorious. They had taken chaos and turned it into opportunity, danger into strategy, and fear into triumph. Kale's quiet brilliance had transformed the palace, the guards, and the princess's understanding of what it meant to be human. They were not merely survivors. They were leaders, innovators, and hunters in their own right. Alara looked at Kale, her heart filled with gratitude. "You've done something extraordinary," she said. "Not just for this palace, but for humanity itself. You've shown us what we are capable of." Kale met her gaze calmly.
"Humans endure," he repeated. "We learn.
We adapt, we rise, and when we do, there is nothing in the universe that can stop us." Alara felt a deep sense of clarity. The battles had been terrifying, the predators fierce and cunning, but humans had prevailed. Not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, strategy, and courage. Humans had turned underestimation into advantage, proving that their greatest weapon was not strength, but mind and will. As the sun rose fully, casting light over the palace and the surrounding forest, Alara knew that the future was bright. The predators had learned their lesson, and humanity had learned its own power. Kale, the apprentice she had once dismissed, had revealed the true potential of humans. They were clever, resilient, and unstoppable. The princess felt a quiet pride, knowing that humans, underestimated by many, could face any challenge, outthink any predator, and survive anything the universe threw at them. And with minds like Kale's guiding them, humanity's rise had only just begun. The palace stood tall, the people within safe and proud, and the predators had stepped back. The humans had won not because they were the strongest, but because they were the smartest, most adaptable, and most determined creatures in the galaxy. Alara smiled, finally understanding what it meant to be human. They endured. They learned, they adapted, and when the universe tested them, they rose. And nothing, not predator, not danger, not impossible odds, could stop them.